The next call is a split call. Eugenie Sage, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In the committee stages, I outlined the general provisions in the Hurunui Kaikōura Earthquakes Recovery Bill and some of the Green Party's thoughts on those. So in this contribution, we'd just like to focus on a couple of specific things. And I was disappointed that the truncated committee stages meant that we didn't get to consider the supplementary order paper in the name of Jacinda Ardern, that I think was aimed at putting some initial safeguards in the bill around heritage. And I think the major task of the Select Committee in considering the bill was actually looking at the adequacy of the checks and balances on these extraordinary powers that the bill is giving to the Executive to ministers to override primary legislation. And the supplementary order paper, I think, was drawing, in Jacinda Ardern's name, was drawing on the experience in Christchurch, where the Orders in Council there, which overrode the Resource Management Act and the provisions in that Act which would normally provide that where a listed heritage building was going to be demolished, there would be an opportunity for the public to comment on that, led to the loss of huge numbers of our buildings in Christchurch with heritage values, even where there was the ability for those buildings to be restored and where they were not affecting public safety. So I think that heritage provision would have ensured that the Minister couldn't have amended the Resource Management Act where it affected heritage buildings which had the highest listing of Category 1. But I think, Mr Speaker, in the committee stages, we did get another safeguard in the bill around the Resource Management Act, which did require, where an order was going to affect the Resource Management Act, that the effects on the environment had to be considered. Now, the Minister said that some of the concerns of members of Parliament, particularly I guess in the Green Party, about the environmental effects of some of the work that's going to be done in recovery may not be as significant as were being overstated, perhaps, I think he was suggesting. But, Mr Speaker, we are very concerned that the work that is done in the name of recovery, for economic recovery, given that Kaikōura has got nature tourism as the centre of its tourism attractiveness, and given that areas like the Lewis Pass Highway go through the Nelson Lakes National Park, the Lewis Pass reserves, there is a significant landscape character in those highways which add to people's experience on the highway, that those values are recognised. Congratulations, Mr Speaker, or Mr Acting Speaker, for your elevation. And we were reassured slightly by the evidence that the New Zealand Transport Agency presented to the Select Committee. They provided a number of documents about the process that they go through when they're doing major works, and they said that they have quite strong social and environmental objectives. There are environmental and social management plans prepared around major works. There's a landscape master plan. They have a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Conservation. They also provided us with a copy of their public engagement policy, which I think is still in draft but is being developed. So the goal of a lot of these documents appeared to be to minimise conflicts between the state highway network and, in the case of conservation land, the protection of conservation land, and to actually minimise adverse effects. So we would certainly encourage the Transport Agency to use all of those procedures that it has, because we want to see the recovery works proceed while protecting the livelihood of powerfishers, crayfishers, others who depend on the marine environment, protecting the landscape values of our national parks and conservation lands, to protect the qualities of the state highway that make driving along parts of the state highway an experience because of those dramatic landscapes. And so we hope that in some of the safeguards that the Select Committee has put in the bill, not only to act as a check on the Minister's powers, but to encourage agencies to make every effort to act in accordance with the statutes, even though they don't have to if there is an order in Council.